Welcome, dear listeners, to Satanists Nextdoor. We're your hosts, Lilin
And Tommy Levine.
Whether you're an open-minded, curious onlooker or a fellow Satanist seeking camaraderie, our goal is to share our personal experiences and delve into the intricate tapestry of Satanism in our daily lives, occasionally inviting other guests to share their unique perspectives, leaving no pentagram unturned. We'll explore how our beliefs shape our views on society, dive into struggles and triumphs we've encountered, and reveal the humanity that unites us all. So grab your favorite chalice and join us on this captivating journey. Satanists Nextdoor is ready to peel back the curtain and offer you a glimpse into our world, one captivating episode at a time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Satanists Nextdoor. Today, before I introduce the episode, I am going to give a bit of a trigger warning on this one. We will be talking about mental health, depression specifically. So if this is something that you don't feel like you might be in the right place, state of mind for, I would say, turn it off now. We've got 30 other episodes that you can listen to. But I did want to put that out there first because I think it's the responsible thing to do before going into a subject like this. So, depression. Why are we talking about depression?
Well, I think aside from the fact that it's something that most people are going to face at some point in their life, when it comes to a community of people like Satanists who are constantly othered and are dealing with different varieties of rejection or ostracization from society, you have a natural level of isolation and depression that can come from that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, for me, depression is I don't know if I would say a difficult subject. I understand it in the sense that I've dealt with depression from times. Like there's instances in my life where I've been depressed. But I know other people deal with depression on a daily basis. That, the depression they feel is overwhelming and oppressive. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean. I can only think of a few times in my life where I've felt truly depressed. I felt sad before, but to me, I can even think back where I didn't even really understand depression because I had never truly gone through it until, some point in my life when, environmental things happened that triggered true depression. I was like, holy shit, now I understand.
Yeah. And I think it's difficult as someone, there's such a degree of depression, right? It's not one size fits all. And it's going to fluctuate even for people that deal with it on a routine basis, from one type of depression to another. So there's tons of different psychological aspects. And I'm not going to pretend to talk about that because I'm not a professional. But from someone that's dealt with depression in different points in my life, probably on a daily basis, it's so important to discuss it because mine is manageable most of the time. And, there's different things that can make it go up a level. If I'm sitting around like 1 to 3, I feel like I'm okay. It's uncomfortable, but it's manageable. It's just kind of a background static. And then things will happen like, the current environment.
Yeah.
You look at things that are happening in the world, the very many different overwhelming situations that we find ourselves in. Sometimes it starts to creep up and I start to feel things that let me know there could be more to it. I'll feel really weepy for no reason, at least not one that I'm aware of, or I'll feel really irritable more than usual. I'll snip more than I usually do, respond in an uncharacteristically irritable way instead of being more level than I typically am, or the self-care stuff. I just won't be as motivated to do the routines that I come to enjoy because I enjoy, looking nice and being presentable. So those things just don't matter, or things don't taste good, or being around people doesn't seem fun, or I just don't want to get out of bed. And it's like a struggle to say, no, you have things you have to do and bills you have to pay and people that rely on you. You got to get up.
Yeah. And I want to respond to that. I do want to put one other point in here as we talk about this. We are not mental health professionals. So the point of this episode is not any sort of therapy or to give you mental health advice. We are merely talking about the topic, the way that it's affected us in our lives, and the way that we've seen it affect other people. If you need mental health help, I would advise, please go do that. I just wanted to put that in here that, we're not
for sure
approaching this as therapist or anything like this. This is really just our feelings, our experiences on the matter. So back into what you were saying, that's when I realized for me when I was depressed, because I'm a work, do things,
very driven,
driven sort of person. And I remember, and it was just a couple of weeks ago where I was just like, I don't want to do anything. I mean, I literally didn't want to get out of bed to go to work. I didn't care about work. I mean, I was like, I just don't care. And I have, like I said, there's only few instances in my life. So when that happens, I don't really recognize it. It was like you were telling me, you have to get up. You have to go, and I'm like, why are you bugging me? Why are you doing? I just want to lay here. I just don't want to get up. I just, fuck, go away. Give me a day. You know what I mean?
Right.
But because you know me so well, you were able to see this is not you.
Yeah.
This is the not you that I know, that I've come to know over 25 plus years.
Yeah. And I think that's another important thing, right? So if you know people and you start to notice things out of the ordinary, it's uncomfortable to say, hey, you don't seem like yourself. And it's uncomfortable to try and be pushy. I mean, you've had to do it for a long time. I mean, in our relationship, you've definitely learned to pick up on things, and you could be
I've kind of been on the other side of it, So.
Yeah. I mean, but it's okay. I'm going to say this in the way hopefully it comes across. It's good that I'm on the other side of it, able to say, hey, you need to look at what's happening and let's get moving. It's important. You can't just sit in it because it just kind of gets worse.
Because I just wanted to sit in the dark, like my dark room in bed and not move. I mean, I was like, and you were like, no, you have to get up. You open the curtains and like, fuck, felt like a vampire there. Listen, I was like, and but and the thing that I didn't realize, and I've come to realize now, is that after an episode of depression like that, it lingers.
Oh yeah.
Because I can literally still feel it, but it's not at the level that I was at.
Right.
And again, I don't know what, sometimes people ask what triggers it and shit. You were asking me what, and I was like, I haven't got a fucking clue.
Yeah. Well, the hope is, when you experience it, you kind of want to, as you're getting out of it, understand, well, did something happen beforehand, or was I feeling unwell? I mean, so many things trigger it, right? You can get an illness that can make you depressed. You can get news that you didn't realize bothered you a lot, that bothers you a lot. There can be so many background things that can lead to episodes of depression where you're just dealing with hopelessness, or feeling like you can't do things in a situation that you want to or should be able to do something. And it's just that powerlessness that sometimes can push you over the edge. I mean, any person at any point in time could find themselves just in the worst pit of despair unexpectedly. So sometimes when you can, it's awesome to be able to reflect on it, to learn what to look out for, to kind of help for future things. And that's one of the ways that I've been able to learn to manage it better. And the other thing is health stuff can change it, right? So hormonal fluctuations at different points in your life, just different light that you're exposed to, doing less active things, eating certain ways can definitely affect your mood and your state, or just the way you perceive yourself one day to another. Maybe you wear something that accentuates an aspect of you that you don't like, and you're like, man, I didn't even realize. And then you kind of
triggers it, that subconsciously triggers it. And that was the hard part for me, because I'm not a feelings person.
No.
Let me explain.
You have feelings, yeah.
I'm a very feelings person to people that are very close to me, to you, to my children. I have endless amounts of love and compassion and empathy and all of that. But I'm not a feelings person where I can describe my feelings, or even sometimes that I even feel feelings. I remember when I was younger and my parents were going through a divorce, and they tried to put me into counseling because they thought because I wasn't upset about it, something must be wrong with me. And like I had counselors telling me, well, you're upset about it. You're just not showing your feelings. And I'm like, no, really, I don't feel anything about it. It doesn't matter. And then they made me like wear this pillow, like bring this pillow around and stuff a towel in it every day to show this. I guess it was supposed to be like the weight of my feelings holding me down. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I really don't. I don't feel it. It's not like I kept trying to tell them that, look, I understand. I comprehend what's going on here. I just really don't have any feelings about it either way, And so for me, when you were trying to say, feelings, I was like, that's where I just I drew a blank because I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And I know we've had those conversations before where we try and talk about feelings, and sometimes I'm just like looking at you with this blank stare, and you're like, don't you? And I'm like, no, I have no comprehension of what you're talking about there.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I tell the dog, do you want to? And they kind of tilt their head and look at you with this like, I'm interested in what you're trying to say, and I'm excited, but I have no freaking idea what you're saying.
Yeah. So no, I mean, but definitely there are things I understand that there's things subconsciously,
right.
Like I said, I could have put a shirt on that reminded me of something from some time ago that was upsetting. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what triggered it for me. And I think that's part of the problem is, I shouldn't say problem. That's part of an issue that with depression that people run into is they don't always, and they can't always put their finger on what triggered this for me. Why am, I know things like money can, right. Bills and stuff like that. And you can have a feeling of hopelessness sometimes.
Monotony of just the everyday stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That can definitely be a point. So I don't know. I don't know where I was going there.
That you don't deal with emotions the same way as everyone else.
Yeah, I guess that would be it. I do, like I said, I have tons of emotions for people that are close to me, but that's about where they end,
I've seen you express care and concern outside of that for different things you feel passionate about. It's just, I think you convey them differently, which is fine. We've talked about that before. Not everyone feels and experiences life the same way. And when you work on that and you kind of combine it with other people, you can actually do a lot more because you have these really deep perspectives from different angles. So it's useful.
And I do think there's a stigma around depression. Depression and specifically people that are in any sort of a leadership position, that depression makes you weak or depression makes you vulnerable or people in certain positions don't get depressed. And I think that stigma needs to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Because I think it makes it difficult for people that are in those sort of positions to talk to other people about what's going on or how they're feeling, because then they feel exposed.
Yeah, I definitely know personally, I won't speak for other people, but I've heard it from other people, that when you're in a leadership position, like if you're in ministry and you're a congregation head, one of the things you don't want to do, right, is to put your problems on your community, because you want to be there to provide a supporting, nurturing community for other people. And you have this fear that if you are, going through something, that it can affect other people's lives negatively, because you know that they're all dealing with different things. And part of what I feel my job is not what everyone feels, but part of what I feel my job is to be there, as someone that you can trust, as someone that can help, hear what they might be having going on. Again, I'm not a trained counselor. I don't have counseling skills. So, of course, if it's a big deal that's going on in their life, I'm always going to recommend that they talk to someone that's at a professional level, right? Because I can only be a sounding board and someone that can listen and give my best understanding of the situation, but I'm not there to fix.
You could be an unconditional friend.
Right, absolutely. And that's something I definitely love to do for people. Regardless of what's going on, I'm here to listen. Regardless of where you are, I'll sit there with you. These are just things I feel compelled to do. And I think for myself, sometimes when I'm feeling in a really bad place, what I don't want to do is share that, because I feel like it can influence people's mood. It can affect them. If there's someone that maybe is going through something, they'll feel less inclined to talk. So it's just concern about the way it could affect others or the way other people could perceive it. So I think it's really important to find a way to share with people, no, I'm not doing the greatest right now. And, I'm working through it, but don't let that be something that stops you from talking to me. If I don't feel like I'm in a place, I will let you know. But it's hard to do that because I think there is a stigma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stigmas around mental health altogether. And then there's different stigmas around the different types of mental health. And, this one specifically, depression, I think, I think each one could have its own.
Oh, for sure.
Show,
Well,
so.
and like you work in a leadership position in your daily job, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I think you understand how when you're in a crappy place, you're more inclined to sort of brush it off and not bring it into work because it could affect the environment for other people or yourself, I think that everyone has a tendency to do that, whether it's because you're a parent and you don't want to make that a problem for your kids or, as a family member or a loved one. It goes on and on, especially, and I know this is something you've dealt with before, when you have a partner who deals with things like depression, what if you talk about it and it sets something else off? And that's a really difficult position to be in.
Yeah. And I'll admit, I definitely have felt that. There's times where I'm like, I just, I'll keep it to myself because I don't want to possibly trigger you,
right?
In a way. And because I know you deal with more depression than, obviously I do, but you're also probably better able to handle it than I am because you've dealt with it for so long, so much of your life.
I don't know. It's like I tell people in every situation, someone's had a different experience that could be perceived as bigger or greater or worse, and they have different skills probably, right? But it's only relative to what you've personally experienced. So if my worst day is this big horrible situation, but your worst day is, maybe your parents got divorced. And I'm not saying that it was.
Yeah.
But as an example, if my worst day was, I watched a building implode and your worst day was a divorce situation, we both experienced the worst moment for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so regardless of which one may be perceived as more horrific, I think it's important to understand relative to your life experience, it could be the worst thing. And it's so important, I think that's another stigma, right? Not to diminish another person's pain because it seems so minuscule by comparison. And I think that's something that people will do on occasion.
Oh, I would say not even on occasion.
Okay.
I would say people tend
minimize
to do
other
that.
people's experiences.
Yeah. Oh, that's bad? You should have seen what happened to me. Well, okay. That like you said, the worst day for a person, that's what they understand as the worst thing. That was their experience. Now, that doesn't mean that something worse can't happen and then they can, recenter what their worst is. But, your worst is your worst. It's like you're scared is your scaredest. The most love you've ever felt is the most love you've ever felt, and it's not really a comparison. It's not something that people should compare against.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've known people, and this is a very valid experience, where the worst thing that happened to them was they lost a pet, someone that they had grown up with, and the loss weighed on them in a way that it still affected them years and years into their life because that stability and that friendship they built with that pet mattered so deeply. And for some people, you could be like, really? Like, it's an animal. Who cares?
I've lost 12 pets in my life, but something like that.
For someone that built a strong bond with something like that, like a pet is part of your family. It becomes part of, your life. And for some people, that is a huge loss because there's so much wrapped into it, especially depending on where you are in your life. So, just keep in mind when you're talking about things like depression, it's important not to try to compare your experience with someone else's, your pain with someone else's, your level of happiness. Some people say, you just don't ever seem happy. Well, but maybe that is the happiest that they ever need to be, that's their level of happy. So it's just recognizing where we are in our life and what we've experienced doesn't translate to other people's experience.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, in a leadership position, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
Because, obviously I can't bring that into my team. Mm-hmm. I can't bring it into clients.
Right. Man, you think that's a bad week? No.
Oh, yeah, let's do this. I can't be on a sales call and then be like, do you have a few minutes to talk? It's just,
No.
So obviously there is, situations, and that would be true even if it wasn't, if if you're a cashier, you can't stop the person in line and talk to them, so there's safe places to talk.
Yeah.
And you should take advantage of those safe places when you have them.
Yeah, which is one of the things I like. Again, being involved with an organization like DSD, you build a community. Mm-hmm. It provides you a place where you can have trusted friends, where you can build a safe foundation. That's not meant to replace other things like we've talked about.
Right, like
if you're in a really bad place, if you need to take medication, don't be upset at yourself for that. Don't diminish that. Need is very real, and it's actually the strongest, bravest thing you can choose to do for yourself is to address these things and to get that help and to let people know. That's something to be proud of. Pretending that you can just shoulder it until it smothers you, that's the worst thing you could do for yourself, right? So compassion and empathy, one of the big things we talk about a lot, it applies so strongly to you as a person. And we forget that. And that's a thing that a lot of the tenets, that we have can be very strongly applied to a person. Nobility and compassion and empathy and all these things. Mental health is one of the biggest challenges that a person will probably ever face, and everyone faces it, right? It doesn't always look like the big things we talk about, like bipolar, schizophrenia, or all these really enormous things that people have a hard time working through, that lifelong challenges are usually attached to. There's tons of things in between that we're all going to face at some point. And so being able to recognize that and to get that help is super important, for all of us.
Yeah, and America, at least, where we live, and specifically Texas, holy shit, that is, as a country, as a state, we are failing horribly when it comes to mental health treatment, health. I remember when it used to be covered by insurance and you could, pay your normal deductible and go, but now it's, it's expensive.
And it got overwhelming for them to try and do all the paperwork and then the staff necessary to just do the paperwork and the phone calls, and it's a lot. That doesn't mean that, it's fair for people to have to suffer for that. But it did get to a point where some therapy institutions won't even take insurance.
Yeah, and so I could see where that becomes an issue too, because let's say you're already depressed and part of your depression is money issues. You're going to go into deeper debt.
It's one more thing.
Right. Yeah. So, definitely something. And unfortunately, that's something none of us can really do. And we can vote. We can, tell our politicians, but unfortunately we can't.
We can lean on our HR departments, that's a thing we can do. We can, lean on our politicians. We can push for things in our community, but it doesn't make it happen overnight.
No.
And when you're in that place, like I said, getting up is hard. So the overwhelming desire to fight these things just isn't there.
Yeah, and I could see, there was things that I didn't understand about it does truly feel like forever. It feels like it'll never end. And that was something that even as an early Satanist and stuff like that, I just did not grasp. I was like, everything has an end, and I used to make those arguments all the time. And I just, until you experience it, it's hard to truly have compassion and to understand what people say when they say it feels hopeless and never ending,
Yeah. And when you're at that place, that is the time where it's the most important to actually reach out to people that you can trust, because the last thing you want to do is be stuck like that, and not have someone that you can share it with, because that's when it starts to get worse. So it's good. I mean, we've had those conversations where, you've said, I don't feel... I'm okay, I could deal with it, and then I'll kind of push and say, well, that's an important part of a relationship, is that we both have to be there for each other, so communication's super important, and it's annoying sometimes. I know I can be annoying with that, but it is. It's so easy to forget yourself trying to keep things going that you don't.
Yeah, and so there's all, like you said, there's people that deal with depression on a chronic, it's a chronic issue. There's bipolar, where you've got
varying degrees of
two variants, and then there's also people that just get depression every once in a blue moon, and it's just as important for them to understand that they, to recognize where you're at, and sometimes to say, hey, I need to talk.
Yeah. Yep, and when you have chronic conditions like depression, it's important to be honest with people in your life. We've had conversations, if I start doing these things, this is probably a warning sign that I need you to be pushy with me, or I need you. And so it's giving people permission to recognize these things about you and being vulnerable enough to say, this is something that happens and this is the way I feel when it happens, and maybe I need you to do these things. And it gives them permission to know that it's okay to push, or this is how you want to be treated, or this is the care that you want. And it helps you kind of work through those problems. And even if it's not frequent, it's something that you occasionally deal with, communicate that too. Maybe that means your partner runs out to the grocery store, grabs some bath bombs and some candles, and, you just take that time to let them know they matter in your life, and that's what it takes to get out. Or sometimes it's like, no, literally, you have to get up, we have bills to pay, you're responsible for stuff, because you say, you got to talk a little tougher, you got to remind me what's important. So knowing your limits and what helps motivate you, super freaking important, and then expressing that to other people so they know and don't inadvertently say something that makes it worse.
Right. Because that can be a challenge too, is, when you're trying to help somebody who's going through depression, you obviously don't want to make it worse. And sometimes people will say things that they think are helpful, but it actually piles on and makes the person feel even worse. If
you're already feeling, maybe you're triggered by shame, and then you say something that makes them feel more ashamed. Now they're like massively more depressed, and now they feel like they've let you down, and then so it becomes this like a never-ending cycle, and nobody knows it, because you can't tell someone what you need in the moment. It's really hard. So if you're in a relationship with someone, even friendship relationship, because that's a relationship, telling people, obviously you're close friends at this point, but telling people, these are things that happen sometimes, and,
this is what to look out for.
This is what to look out for, and this is the best way to help. And if you're someone like me, I even have stuff tucked aside for just automatically being able to have it for a bad period of time, like a book that I really like, or food that I really like, or I'm a really big bath person, so maybe if I'm feeling super crap, I will put myself in a tub because it's very low effort, and I do feel so much better when I'm done with it. So it's just different things for different folks. Obviously I'm not saying go out and just do nothing but luxury treat yourself. Do it, but, have other things in place. Look forward to things. Plan stuff at different points. If you are really busy every month, plan for something positive at the end of that month. Yeah. If you have special days throughout the year, make them big, make them count. Don't go and break the bank, right? But set yourself up for things to find positivity. It could be hiking routinely. It could be meeting up with your friends for a coffee. It could be, as simple as just having couples massages, 3 times a year. Just little things that you can do to look forward to. Make a big difference in people's psychological, positivity. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough subject. Yeah. It's a tough subject. And, I do notice that a lot of people shy away from talking about mental health.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is a tough subject, for one.
Highly stigmatized.
Yeah. You don't want to inadvertently trigger somebody by having a conversation. And again, you don't want to seem vulnerable. Some people.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's a common thing. Yeah. And I think societally, it's something we have to work through. It's like, here's another one. As a parent, you go through pregnancy, people say, oh, you're supposed to be happy, it's good. Well, it's hard. And not everyone talks about how difficult it is. So when you feel like it's difficult, when you feel like it's just a hard thing to go through, you feel like something's wrong with you. So that can lead to depression. And then having a baby, your body goes into this state of shock. Everything's changed. You've gone through this very painful, traumatic experience. Your body feels very different. Nobody talks to you about that either. So the way that you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and go, man, I don't like what I'm looking at right now. I don't know if I'll ever be the same as I was before. No one talks about it. Another really messed up area men and women both deal with. As you go through different phases of your life, your hormones change. And the things that you loved before, you don't necessarily love as much anymore. And it affects the way you feel as a person, because you can't give your partner certain, things that you used to before. You don't feel as, interested in certain activities and I'm not just talking about sex. Like, everything is affected by your hormonal state in life, So your activity level changes. Then it's time maybe to talk to your doctor, because there are things that you can do to help combat some of these very normal changes that happen in life, but nobody talks about it.
Yeah. Nobody talks about, also you look back at like, how, obviously as people age, I know I'm not the striking young man I used to be.
Still handsome, but whatever.
But
yeah, it's different. You see the differences.
You see the differences in yourself, and some people are very comfortable with that and some people are not.
Yeah. And if dyeing your hair and doing things that bring you to a place where you feel more in line with how you think you should look, that's fine. Whatever you have to do for self-care, that's good. It's when you start doing excessive things, like maybe you feel harmful. A thrill. Yeah, you feel a thrill. Shopping makes you feel better. Well, if you're breaking the bank, I guarantee you that it's not going to last for very long.
Yeah.
Or if you're looking at plastic surgery to fix things that naturally happen and it becomes an addictive kind of thing. Again, it's okay to do small things that are safe and healthy and don't have negative ramifications like large ones. But if you become someone that needs that to feel like a normal person, then there could be something going on. And that applies to just about anything in life. You can use sex as a coping mechanism to the point where it becomes a detriment. So, just recognizing there's the other part of it, right? Depression can lead to addictive behavior.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Mechanism.
I was about to say, we're kind of going into addiction here, which we did an episode on. So,
and that's another place I'll go ahead and plug it. Sober Faction is a fantastic place to deal with addictive behavior, and they have a lot of different options for people, and you don't have to be a Satanist to be involved.
You don't have to be a Satanist, and Sober Faction also isn't just for drug and alcohol.
Right.
From
behavior.
My understanding and from our interview that we did before, it is addictive behavior. So it's not just because, again, a lot of people think when they think Sober Faction, their immediate thoughts are drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But my understanding, and
correct us if we're wrong.
Somebody from Sober Faction wants to correct me on this one, please do. My understanding is it is addictive behaviors.
That's another thing that leads to depression, right? When you're dealing with addiction and you slip up, because everyone that goes through addiction slips up. It's not that you're a failure. It's not that you're faulty. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It is a natural part of the process because it became a coping mechanism for a reason. Mm-hmm. And you're going to keep encountering those situations in life. Struggles don't just stop because we decide that we don't want to use drugs or alcohol or other things to cope with them. Those situations are going to come up again.
Sometimes it's self-medicating too.
Well, that's what I mean. Coping mechanisms could just be, I don't like being around people. I get really anxious, and I found out if I drink, I feel like I can then, calmly relate to people, and I'm totally normal, which is something I've done. So I'm speaking from experience. But it doesn't make things normal. It just seems
normal to you,
right?
But the other people on the outside are kind of like
recognize,
ooh, you are drunk or whatnot.
Yeah, and even if you got a coping, like it's a sort of a buzz and it just makes you feel comfortable, I guarantee you at some point you have to up that in order to just get that same, calm state of mind, and then it gets into weird places. So that's just an aspect, but self-medicating with drugs and alcohol is a super normal thing that people do. Smoking, caffeine, things that are readily available. Yep. Alcohol, readily available. Marijuana, it
depending on the state.
Which I still maintain is a better option than drinking. For a variety of reasons.
Absolutely. I will gladly jump on the legalized marijuana. It's better than alcohol train, in my personal opinion.
Right. Obviously, external substances all come with drawbacks.
Yes.
So I'm not going to pretend that there's a magic cure-all out there. There isn't. But, when you're talking about these things, it is normal for people to seek away. It's not just people. There are birds that have figured out that there are berries that ferment and make them drunk, and they seek them out intentionally because they enjoy the sensation. So it is not just limited to human animals. There are many creatures that have shown that this is something that they do intentionally to try to deal with stressful situations. So it's a natural thing that we all do, and the important thing is recognizing it. It's just like the depression thing. It's recognizing it, learning how to get ahead of it when you recognize the sensations that are starting to bubbling up. And that just takes time to learn about you and what you need. We don't always know what we need. We don't always know what we want. So learning to make diaries or to make different plans to kind of check yourself at the door or provide a guideline for other people is a useful way to deal with that.
Yeah. And I think, again, I TST as a community, I think is a great benefit, because a lot of people look at Satanists, even other Satanists sometimes look at Satanists, and, you know, it's this facade of a mask that you put on. Oh, I'm a big bad Satanist, nothing bothers me, you know, sort of thing. But that's not always true. You know, people, no matter who the person is, will probably at some point in their life run into some sort of depression, you know. And again, like I said, I felt sad, but the depression part, they were so few and far between that it was kind of hard to recognize those. But I think TST has done a wonderful job of having a community there for Satanists, you know, like you said, people that are often othered. And you want to try and figure out how to say this so that if I fuck this up, know that I didn't mean, you know, there's a lot of, I don't even know where I was going with that.
Well, I think you were saying that there's a lot of different people that are drawn to Satanism for a variety of reasons, and a lot of those reasons often leave you feeling like there's something wrong with you. Society doesn't leave room for people that don't fall into the expected behavioral categories that we've come to know. That's
what I was trying to say. Society in general, you know, your normal society doesn't necessarily have compassion or empathy for people like us Satanists. You know, they kind of almost look at us like, well, you did it to the, you deserve that. You did it to yourself, you know. If you would have been in a good church community, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know.
Like we had this discussion earlier, there wouldn't be an entire educational outlet for religious counselors and therapists if that fixed things. Religion's not a Band-Aid. It doesn't fix, you know, or I should say it is a Band-Aid.
Yeah,
it's not
a cure.
Fix things. It helps you to heal in certain situations, and that includes Christianity. It can be a very healing thing for people that use it that way, and they have outlets for dealing with that kind of stuff.
But if God was the cure, you wouldn't have any need for Christian counselors.
Yeah. So exactly, but everyone's going to come into you know, a situation that they feel overwhelmed by, and that is a normal part of life. It's easy though, because we're taught as a society that failure is a fault of yours. You know, not being able to make the bills every month, not being able to get the right job, not being able to find the right partner, you know, not having the right house. All these things are told to us. These are signs of accomplishment, right?
Yep.
So when we don't meet these milestones that society kind of puts out there, it leads to these feelings of depression. You know, if I didn't get the right education, I'm dumber than so-and-so. If I didn't get the right job, I'm a failure. If I don't have the right partner, it must be me. If I'm not satisfactory to my partner, you know, I'm a failure. Instead of understanding we all encounter this. And it's what we do with those moments that kind of make the difference.
And I will say social media, it does not help at all. I mean, because you're constantly bombarded on social media with a lot of negativity.
Oh, yeah.
And so sometimes it's best to put the phone up and go touch some grass. Now, I'm not a person that says, get off of social media, blah, 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 because I enjoy social media.
It is a useful tool.
It's a useful tool. But there are times where you are just bombarded with negativism or things that are scary or fearful. I mean, we're going into 2024 and holy fuck, what could happen at the end of this year with the election. So, you know, when you're constantly bombarded with that, it's like it can bring feelings of helplessness, which can then lead to depression. And so sometimes it's good to put the phone up, go touch some grass.
Yeah, turn off the TV, put the phone away, you know, put on some relaxing to you music, or just go out and just be in nature if you can do that. That is such a great way.
Go take a hike in nature. We did that last weekend.
Yeah.
Before it got really cold.
We were all, I think, feeling a little in the funk. And I was like, you know what we should do? We should go out to breakfast and we should go outside. And it turned out to be, I did actually feel a lot better after that.
Yeah.
Part of me didn't want to, like, even, it sounds stupid, but part of me didn't even want to. I was like, you know, but I could just stay in bed and be cozy and it's fine. But it turned out a lot better to go out and actually do that.
Yeah. And it was, I think part of the motivation for me too is, again, as a parent, I was noticing some depression in my child. And so I was like, you know what we need to do, because I wanted to bring her out and I wanted her to have, but by doing that, I also helped myself.
That's an awesome benefit
at the same time.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, we used to hike all the time. And there was times where we lived in different places where it was much easier to hike. Obviously, we live in the cement jungle right now, so it's a little bit difficult, but there are big places out here that you can go hike that aren't all that far off. But I understand some people live in the cement jungle right in the middle of it, and it's not easy to do.
But that's okay. There are options. Even we talked about this recently with our congregation, free options. So there's museums, beautiful place to go out and do things. There's zoos. There's a lot of places where you can find beauty and just to take a moment to enjoy things outside of yourself that are helpful. And maybe that's not helpful for you, but there are different things. There's, like Meetup has tons of groups that do things like game nights, that do different events, local food groups. There's tons of different things. Again, you want to set these things up ahead of time, so you've kind of set yourself up a routine of doing things that are nice for you. But these things help us to combat depressive episodes.
Yeah. And I've noticed, I have seen more people, it seems, and again, this is my perception. It seems that I've seen more people lately that I know that are going through some sort of depression. At what level is different for everybody. But I have seen it. And again, I don't know if that's just our social environment that we're in right now or what, middle of winter. Sometimes
seasonal depression's a thing.
Yeah, it is the thing. That was something that I never really I've seen you have that, and I don't think my bout of depression was seasonal, but I do understand some people do go through seasonal depression. I've always been kind of a nighttime person anyway, so the lack of the sun for me doesn't really do a whole lot, and I like the winter, I like the fall. I actually like
circadian rhythms are a thing,
Yeah. But I do understand that it does affect some people, and I've heard good things about some of the lights that they had. I mean, we had a conversation. I forgot who it was with. It might have been on one of the council calls where somebody asked me if I had ever used the lights, and I hadn't because I hadn't needed it, but I have had feedback from people that did, and they had good things to say.
Yeah. I'll be the first to admit, getting a good dose of sun on my face for a little while does feel good. If I'm having a really hard day at work, go out and take a few minutes to take a breath of fresh air makes a difference. Change in environment, change of just everything can really be helpful. So, it's okay to stop and take a break, even if you doesn't feel like you can.
Yeah.
But,
I think that's part of it too, is giving yourself permission.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I like about the Satanic community, not just TST, but I feel like it's very strong within TST, is the freedom to express your struggles. I think we give ourselves more permission because we recognize that this is part of being a human being, that we are going to have hard times, and we try to give permission to one another without fear of judgment, without having these expectations that a lot of other things will have. One of the things we talked about, sobriety, right? I think there's a difficult expectation put on people that when you fall, you have to start over again and you've failed. And I think one of the nice things about the Satanic community is it's not seen that way. It's seen as just having
part of the process.
Right. It's having that moment and recognizing the moment and moving forward from that moment, not going all the way back and starting again. It's not a board game. You don't have to go back to start and work all the way through without collecting your...
Go back to go. Skip, do not collect $200.
Yeah. So life is not that. And the other thing I love about Satanism is we recognize, for the most part, there are different factions and groups within Satanism, is that this is our one and only life, right?
Yes.
And so taking care of yourself, living to your fullest, and engaging with people that matter in your life every day in as meaningful a way as you can. Again, we all work, we have lives. It's sometimes just sending a text, letting someone know that they matter to you. But we understand that this is the experience. This is it. And to do the most we can with each day is kind of the point.
Yeah. I mean, indulgence, whatever you want to call it. But like you said, that was the part that I always had the hardest time with, and I think it's because I became a Satanist at such a young age that I had always had the mindset of, this is it. This is all we get. This life that we're giving right here. There's no glorious,
hereafter. Maybe there is. Maybe there is. But from my perspective, that's a beautiful fantasy.
Right. From my belief that, and I don't make decisions based off of this glorious fantasy life that, a lot of people believe in. I have always believed this is what we get. This one, make the most of it and understand where you're at, and mindfulness.
Oh, yeah.
Was
dialectic behavioral therapy is something that's made a massive impact in my life, DBT, and it talks a lot about mindfulness. And that just means recognizing yourself in the moment. So when you find yourself having a great moment, you can use it because it's a great way to recognize and repeat different positive things, right? But it's super important for anger issues, for depression issues, for anxiety, recognizing what's happening in that moment to kind of deconstruct it and work through it so that you come out of it in a positive way. Yeah. So I really love that.
It was one area when Buddhists use a lot of mindfulness. It's a big part of the Buddhists. And so when I studied some of, the teachings and when I studied Buddhism for a little while, more, and when I say study, I mean literally just study it, it was the one great takeaway that I took from it was mindfulness. Yeah. Truly being aware. And a lot of that also came from martial arts for me, is because, they...
That's another awesome thing you can do. Again, I understand finances is difficult for people, and I'm not telling you to put yourself in a bad financial place. But if you can enroll in some kind of a martial art, not only do you learn useful skills, but it provides you with the endorphins from the exercise and skills that you may not even know are accompanying it.
Or even yoga or Tai Chi or whatnot.
Going to the gym. Just practicing, recognizing your form, feeling your body, same kind of thing. Yep. So there's different things. But, like I was saying, the tenets themselves, if you're in TST, if you're that kind of Satanist, compassion, empathy includes you. So recognizing to treat yourself with the same kindness and empathy that you would for other people. And depression is not a weakness. Yeah. It is just a phase that, people go through that happens, and you recognize it and you do what you can with it and you move through it. There isn't a right or wrong way. Oh, well, I mean, there's a wrong way.
Yeah, there's a wrong way.
There's not a right or wrong way to process those feelings, provided that you're not causing harm to yourself or others. The struggle for justice. This could mean talking to people, seeking justice with a doctor, fighting for medical care, getting the things that you need, in-person relationships, making sure that you're advocating for yourself, setting healthy boundaries, bodily autonomy. That also means mental health, supporting the idea of seeking therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, things that help benefit your well-being and your mental health, expressing one's struggles, being able to discuss mental health challenges without fear of judgment, with openness, being critical of yourself, if you're having things, recognizing what you're doing to contribute, aligning beliefs with your scientific understanding. We talk about that a lot, but that applies to evidence-based treatment.
Yeah.
So not trying to use things because it sounds cool or because it's the new hip thing to do, recognizing that there are approved methods of dealing with certain things for a reason, and challenging that where it's not fitting. So not one size fits all. Acknowledging fallibility, recognizing that it's okay to have difficult days or weeks or months, and nobody's expected to be perfect.
No.
So that's another area. Fallibility can reduce self-imposed pressure and guilt often associated with depression. Guilt is a huge trigger for depression. And then, of course, the inspiring nobility in coping with mental health challenges. Working through mental health issues is itself a noble endeavor. So personal growth, resilience, the pursuit of mental wellness is a valuable, honorable journey. It's not something that is to be brushed aside and treated like it doesn't matter. It is the most important thing you could arguably do for yourself.
Absolutely.
So there's my little take on where the 7 tenets are applied to mental health.
Well, I honestly think that is probably a great place to stop at. And just again, if you're feeling depressed, know you're not alone. Know there's a community out there, and
don't sell yourself short. We all go through this at one point or another. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that there's things to work through, and that's okay.
Yeah. So with that, I bid you good day, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at in the world. Hail Satan.